Before we dive in, make sure to like this video and hit the subscribe if you haven't already, and if this is your first time here, welcome you. Picked a wild one to start with. Let's get into it. My name is Mark. I've always thought of myself as a simple, grounded man, dedicated to my family, my work, and the traditions that shaped my life. But all of that was tested one unforgettable weekend. It started like any other November. Deer season in Missouri. The first weekend was always mine. A ritual. A tradition. Usually, my wife, Lisa, would come with me to our cabin, tucked deep in the woods. We'd built that place together, carving trails and making it feel like a second home. But this year was different. A few weeks before the trip, over dinner, Lisa told me she wouldn't be joining me. She had been chosen to attend an important education reform conference. I was proud of her. But I was disappointed too. It would be my birthday weekend, and I'd be alone. Or so I thought. Lisa had other plans. "I don't want you out there by yourself," she said. "Not after your heart scare this year." Her solution? Chloe, a young colleague from her school. Recently divorced, kind, and optimistic in a way that barely masked her own heartache. Lisa thought the trip would be good for both of us, company for me, and a new experience for Chloe. I didn't argue, but I wasn't thrilled either. Hunting had always been a quiet, solitary retreat. The idea of sharing it with someone who didn't know the first thing about rifles or silence made me uneasy. On Friday evening, I picked her up. She came out smiling, her arms full of gear, waving at me with energy that was hard to ignore. She chatted the entire drive about her job, her past, even about her hopes for the future. I found myself relaxing, despite myself. Her enthusiasm was contagious. We arrived late. I lit the fireplace, she claimed the loft, and soon the cabin was warm and glowing. I sat on the couch, trying to lose myself in an old war movie. But when she came down to ask about the shower, something shifted in me. She was comfortable in a way I wasn't expecting. Carefree. The kind of ease that made me feel uneasy. Not because of anything she did wrong, but because of something within me. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed moments that shouldn't have meant anything: her smile, the way she laughed, how her eyes softened when she spoke. I hated how easily the quiet of the cabin amplified those thoughts. The next morning, I tried to shake it all off. I reminded myself why we were here, hunting. Not whatever this was. She came downstairs late, cheerful, ready. Her presence was big, filling the cabin with noise and energy that clashed with the stillness I had grown to love. As we ate breakfast, she talked about how excited she was to learn, how much she appreciated the chance to be here. I nodded, kept my focus on the bacon, trying to ignore the flickers of confusion inside me. We rode out to the blind, her arms wrapped around my waist on the ATV. The air was cold, the trees bare, and the world was still. We walked the rest of the way, her footsteps light behind mine. She was eager, curious, asking questions that I answered quietly, with patience. When the young buck finally stepped into the clearing, I guided her through the shot. But she hadn't loaded the rifle. The moment passed. She was disappointed. I reassured her. She wasn't the first to make a mistake. But the mood had shifted. She pulled off her jacket, frustrated by the warmth. I tried to focus on the clearing, but my thoughts were louder than the woods around us. Her presence was everywhere, in the scent of her shampoo, in the way she sighed, in the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She asked me questions, soft ones. About loneliness. About the silence. About being out there alone. I answered honestly, but I could feel the edge of something approaching. Something neither of us said aloud. And then she said, "Well, at least you've got me this time." I smiled, a tight, unsure smile. I didn't know what to do with her kindness. With the space that seemed to shrink between us. With the weight of choices I wasn't ready to face. The rest of the day passed in that strange quiet, our words light, but the silences heavy. That night, as she climbed the loft stairs and wished me good night, I sat by the fire, staring into the flames. My chest ached, not from temptation, but from guilt. Not from desire, but from confusion. I loved my wife. I loved the life we built. But something in me, some weakness I hadn't faced, was stirring. This weekend wasn't about deer. It was about a man learning the limits of his own heart. About realizing that even the strongest boundaries can be tested, but also that they can be held. The hunting trip ended without another deer in sight. But I didn't care. The real battle that weekend hadn't been in the woods. It had been inside me. Chloe was kind, full of life, and unaware of the storm she stirred in me. Or maybe she wasn't unaware at all. Either way, nothing happened. Not really. But something almost did, and that was enough to leave a scar. We packed up on Sunday morning. The ride home was quieter than the ride there. Chloe seemed content, humming softly to herself as she looked out the window. She thanked me for the weekend. I nodded and gave her a small smile. I dropped her off and waited until she disappeared into her house before pulling away. The second I turned the corner, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. What had I almost done? When I pulled into our driveway, the porch light was already on. Lisa wasn't home yet. Her conference would end the next morning, but the house felt different. Still. Quiet. I stepped inside and dropped my bag near the door. The smell of her candles lingered in the air, lavender and vanilla. Familiar. Comforting. And somehow painful. I walked through the house slowly, brushing my fingers along the edges of the framed photos on the hallway wall, pictures of us on vacation, at Christmas, holding hands by the lake. How do you look into the eyes of someone who trusts you completely after nearly betraying them? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on our bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the moments I hadn't spoken of. It wasn't just about Chloe. It was about something deeper, something I'd ignored for too long. I felt old. Faded. Like the best of me had already been spent. Chloe had reminded me that there was still fire in me, but she wasn't mine to warm by. That place belonged to Lisa. And yet, I'd let it flicker. The next morning, Lisa returned home. She greeted me with a bright smile, wrapping her arms around me as if nothing had changed. But something had. I held her longer than I usually did. I buried my face in her shoulder and whispered, "I missed you." She smiled, pulling back to look at me. "You okay?" I nodded. Lied. "Yeah, just tired." Over the next few days, I found myself watching Lisa more closely. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she read. The way she hummed while folding laundry. The little things I'd stopped noticing. She hadn't changed. I had. One evening, I found her on the back porch, sipping tea and staring into the fading light. I sat beside her. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" she asked. "For trusting me. For believing in me more than I sometimes believe in myself." She smiled gently. "You've always been steady, Mark. That's one of the things I love most about you." I swallowed hard. I didn't deserve those words. But I accepted them. Because I was choosing to be that man again. For days, I thought about telling her everything. About the way Chloe had made me feel. About the way I had almost lost sight of who I was. But in the end, I didn't. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because nothing happened. Because sometimes, the most painful things we go through are the ones we face alone. The ones that remind us what we stand for. Instead, I wrote about it. In a notebook I keep hidden in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. A letter to myself. A warning. A confession. Now, weeks later, the memory still returns, soft, quiet, and shameful. But it also brings something else. Gratitude. Because I didn't fall. I stood at the edge and I stepped back. And when Lisa looks at me now, I hold her gaze. I don't turn away. Not because I'm proud, but because I'm still hers. Life settled back into its usual rhythm. Work, dinners, quiet evenings, small talk that filled the spaces between. On the surface, everything looked the same. But I knew something had changed in me. It wasn't just about the near mistake in the woods. It was about the way I'd let myself drift for so long, unnoticed, unspoken, even to myself. Lisa didn't ask questions. She never hinted at suspicion. She just loved me the same way she always had, softly, faithfully, with the kind of steadiness I'd taken for granted. And that made it harder. Because she deserved more than silence. One night, after dinner, we sat together on the porch. The autumn wind was sharp, and she pulled a blanket over her legs. I watched her, the woman who had shared so many years of life with me. The woman who still chose me every day. "I've been thinking a lot," I said. She looked over, her eyes gentle. "About what?" "About us. About everything I've forgotten to say over the years." She smiled softly. "You've always been quiet. I'm used to it." "I don't want you to be used to it," I said. "I don't want to be the kind of husband who disappears even when he's standing right here." Her hand reached for mine under the blanket, and she gave it a squeeze. "Then don't disappear. Just like that. No anger. No suspicion. Only grace." The next morning, I made us coffee and brought it to the bed, something I hadn't done in years. She laughed, surprised. I sat beside her and just watched her for a moment, her hair still messy from sleep, her face soft in the morning light. "I forgot how much I like seeing you like this," I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Real. Unfiltered. Mine." She looked away for a moment, her voice softer. "Sometimes I wonder if you still see me at all." "I do now," I said. "I think I got lost for a while, but I'm finding my way back." That day, we took a walk through the neighborhood, something we hadn't done in a long time. No destination. Just steps. Quiet ones. Together. Over the next few weeks, I tried to show her with small things, helping in the kitchen, leaving notes in her car, asking her about her day, and truly listening. Not just nodding, not just hearing the words. Listening. We laughed more. We talked deeper. Some nights, we held each other longer than we used to, and it wasn't about fixing what had almost gone wrong. It was about remembering what had always been right. One evening, while Lisa was out visiting her sister, I took out the notebook from my drawer, the one with the letter I'd written to myself after the trip. I read it again. And then I tore it out. Not to forget, but to release it. Then I started a new page. This one was for Lisa. I told her the truth, not the details that would only hurt, but the feelings that had scared me. I wrote about my loneliness, my weakness, my regret, and most of all, my gratitude. For her love, for her patience, for the way she loved me at my worst, even when she didn't know she was saving me. I didn't give her the letter. Not right away. But I would someday, when she needed to hear it, or when I needed the courage to speak it. One night, we sat on the porch again, the stars scattered above us. Lisa leaned her head on my shoulder. "You've been different lately," she said. "Softer. Better?" I asked. She smiled. More real. I closed my eyes for a moment and let her warmth settle into me. "I want to grow old with you," I whispered. "Not just exist beside you." "You already are," she said. We just took a little detour. Time passed like river water, sometimes slow, sometimes rushing, but always moving. Lisa and I grew older together. Her hair turned silver at the temples. My knees began to ache on cold mornings. But somehow, we were more in rhythm than we had ever been. We didn't talk much about the hunting trip. She never asked what had really happened out there, and I never offered. It became a silent chapter, a page turned, but never torn out. But I knew it mattered. Because after that trip, I stopped drifting. And I started choosing her again. Every single day. One autumn weekend, 10 years later, Lisa surprised me. "I want to go back to the cabin," she said over breakfast. My fork paused midair. "The hunting cabin?" She smiled, her eyes twinkling. "It's been a long time. I miss the trees. The quiet. You." I nodded slowly. "I'd like that." And so we packed a bag, just one this time, and returned to the place that nearly broke us, but never did. The cabin was dustier, quieter, but still standing. Just like us. We lit the fireplace, brewed coffee, and stood together on the porch watching the leaves fall in waves of orange and gold. Later, we walked the trail to the blind. "This is where you spent your birthday that year, isn't it?" Lisa asked softly, her boots crunching the leaves. I hesitated. "Yes." She didn't say anything for a while. The woods around us were silent, like they were listening. Then she looked at me. "I've always known there was more to that trip than you ever told me." I stopped walking. My heart beat loudly in my chest. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of how close I came to forgetting who I was. Of hurting you. She nodded, her eyes wet but steady. But you didn't. That's what matters. We reached the blind and sat inside, just like I had 10 years before, but this time, her hand found mine. I forgive you, she whispered. I closed my eyes. I don't know if I deserve that, I replied. You came home to me. You came back long before your boots touched our doorstep. That's what I remember. We sat there for hours, not watching for deer, but for memories. And peace. That night, as she slept curled beside me under layers of old quilts, I got out of bed and reached into my old bag. I'd brought the letter. The one I'd written to her but never given. I slipped it onto her pillow. She read it the next morning. Quietly. Carefully. Her fingers trembling a little. When she finished, she looked at me through tears, not of pain, but of release. I never needed this, she said, holding up the letter. But I'm glad you did. I sat beside her. Why? Because it means you loved me enough to stay. And strong enough to face yourself. That afternoon, we sat outside in silence, letting the wind speak for us. The forest had changed, but so had we. Not every love story is smooth. Some are made of sharp turns, unspoken apologies, and quiet mercy. And sometimes, the most faithful kind of love is the kind that stumbles, then learns to walk again. Hand in hand. Sometimes, I wonder if Mark ever truly knew how much I saw. The quiet sadness in his eyes after that trip. The way he looked at me with guilt hidden behind every smile. The long pauses when I asked how the weekend went, and he said, it was fine. It wasn't fine. But I didn't ask more. Not because I didn't care, but because I was waiting. Waiting for him to care enough to tell me the truth in his own time. I've lived long enough to know that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes back to you in smaller ways. A hot cup of tea made without asking. A slow dance in the kitchen when no music plays. Or a broken man quietly returning to the woman he never stopped loving. That was Mark. My quiet man. My lost and found. There were nights I cried while he slept beside me. Nights I wondered if he had fallen for someone else. Or just for the idea of being someone new. But I never stopped making space for his return. Not because I was weak. But because I believed that love was not a perfect story. It's a patient one. The day he gave me the letter, I didn't need it. I had already forgiven him years ago. Not because he deserved it. But because I did. I deserved peace. And so did he. I read his words again on the porch that evening. As the wind moved through the trees like a whisper from God. I'm sorry I left you in pieces while still lying in your bed, he wrote. I'm sorry for the ways I forgot how lucky I was to be loved by you. I pressed the paper to my chest and let the tears fall. They weren't sad tears. They were the kind that come when something long buried is finally laid to rest. Now, years later, when I look at Mark beside me, his hair more gray than brown, his eyes softer than ever, I don't see the man who almost lost me. I see the man who chose to return. Who walked back, not with flowers or grand promises, but with silence, humility, and steady hands. That's the kind of love I always prayed for. Not perfect, just real. Closing lines. If love is a story, then let ours be one of quiet miracles. Of almost breaking, but never letting go. Of staying, even when it would have been easier to run. Of choosing each other. Again and again. In the soft light of forgiveness. Words caught in my throat. Thanks for bringing me out here, she said, her voice soft. I know it's not the same without your wife, but I'm glad to be here with you. I swallowed hard, nodding. It's no problem. I'm glad you're here too. The words landed heavier than they should have. Laden with meaning I couldn't quite unpack. Chloe smiled again, her gaze lingering on mine. Before she turned back to the clearing. I tried to follow her lead, forcing my attention outward. But the line between us had already begun to blur. The boundary I'd sworn to maintain was slipping. And I wasn't sure I had the strength to stop it. The sun dipped lower, casting golden hues across the treetops. But I could barely see the forest. All I could feel was her. Her presence beside me had become magnetic, each of her movements pulling my focus. We sat in silence, waiting for deer. But the real tension wasn't in the woods. It was in the blind. She shifted. Her bare arm brushed mine. Brief. Innocent. But it sent a jolt through me. I couldn't ignore. I tightened my grip on the rifle. Focus, I told myself. I'm sorry about missing that shot earlier, she whispered. It happens, I replied, more gruff than I meant. Everyone misses sometimes. She turned to me, eyes earnest. Do you think I'll get another chance? I glanced at her, held her gaze a moment too long. Maybe. Deer are unpredictable. But you have to be ready. She smiled, faint and knowing. Thanks for being patient with me. I didn't think this trip would be so intense. The way she said intense made my heart skip. Silence again. But not the peaceful kind. It was charged, thick with unspoken words. She leaned forward to adjust her boot. Her hair spilled across her shoulder, brushing my arm. The scent of her shampoo lingered. Familiar. Comforting. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it. Then she turned to me again. You've been quiet, she said, voice low. What's on your mind? I hesitated, just keeping an eye out for deer. She smiled wider, her eyes knowing. You're a terrible liar, you know that? I chuckled nervously. I'm not lying. She leaned closer, whispering. You're distracted. I can feel it. I froze, my heart pounding. Chloe. She placed her hand on my arm. Light, deliberate. You don't have to say anything, she murmured. I feel it too. I looked away. This isn't right, I said, barely audible. Maybe, she replied softly. But it doesn't feel wrong. Her words hung in the air, challenging everything I believed about myself. I wanted to argue, to pull away, but I didn't. For the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me, something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. Chloe, I began. But she reached out, touched my cheek gently. It's okay, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. And in that moment, with the last rays of sun painting the sky orange and pink, I let the boundaries fall away. I leaned in. Our lips met. And the world outside the blind ceased to exist. No cold. No woods. No promises. Just us. Her kiss was hesitant at first, like she was waiting for me to stop her. But I didn't. I couldn't. My hands found her arms, then her back, pulling her closer. For a split second, guilt surged through me. My wife's face flickered in my mind. Her trust. Her love. But then Chloe sighed softly, her fingers grazing the back of my neck, and all rational thought melted away. This is wrong, I whispered, breaking the kiss. Foreheads touching. Breaths mingling. Maybe, she said. But does it feel wrong? I didn't answer. Because it didn't. It felt real. Raw. Alive. If you want me to stop, she said, tell me now. I looked into her eyes. No manipulation. Just vulnerability that mirrored my own. I don't want you to stop. I heard myself say. She smiled. And this time, the kiss was not hesitant. It was deliberate. Deep. Consuming. We stayed like that for what felt like hours. No woods. No rifles. Just heat and heartbeats. But eventually, the cold crept back in. She shivered. We should head back, I said, my voice rough. She nodded, but lingered, resting her head on my shoulder, arms wrapping around me, in a way that felt both comforting and possessive. I don't want this to end, she whispered. It doesn't have to, I replied, before I could stop myself. Back at the cabin, as fire crackled and shadows danced on the walls, we sat across from each other. This changes everything, doesn't it? She asked. I nodded. Yes, it does. Later, as she cupped a mug of tea in trembling hands, I felt the weight between us press down. I know we need to talk, she said, barely above a whisper. But I don't even know where to start. I ran a hand through my hair. What happened out there, it can't happen again. She didn't argue. She just nodded. I knew it was wrong even while it was happening, she whispered. But it felt real. Like something I've been missing for so long. My chest ached. Because I knew exactly what she meant. It felt real to me too, I said quietly. But that doesn't make it right. We crossed a line, Chloe. One we can't uncross. Her voice cracked. Do you regret it? I paused, the answer burning my throat. I regret the circumstances, what it means for my marriage, for your relationship with my wife. But I can't sit here and tell you I regret feeling alive again. Tears slid down her cheeks. I didn't mean to make things harder for you, she said. I just wanted to learn something new. I didn't expect this. Neither did I. We have to move forward, I said. If this ever gets out, I won't say anything, she promised. No one has to know. And it stays that way, I said firmly. No second chances. No slip-ups. This ends here. She nodded. Eventually, she stood, arms wrapped around herself. I think I'll head to bed. I watched her climb the stairs. Light footsteps, deliberate. When she disappeared into the loft, I dropped my head into my hands, the weight of the day crushing me. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could choose who I became afterward. As the fire faded to embers, I made a silent vow. This would be the last time. The last time I let desire override judgment. The last time I put my marriage at risk. But even as I promised myself, a quiet, dangerous thought lingered. Would I have the strength to keep it? Final reflection. Looking back, one truth remains. Our actions carry consequences. Even those moments of weakness. Even the ones that felt beautiful. Boundaries matter. Temptation is powerful, but the peace of a clear conscience is priceless. If there's emptiness in love, we must address it, not escape it, because trust, once broken, rarely returns whole, and love built on secrets is never love that lasts. The sun rose slowly, casting pale gold through the cabin window. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee I hadn't touched. I hadn't slept. Not really. Just sat there, thinking, regretting, remembering. Upstairs, the floor creaked. She was awake. My chest tightened. Soon, we would have to look at each other again. Say something. Pretend like last night wasn't the thing. That changed everything. Chloe came down quietly, wrapped in a sweater. Her hair loose, her eyes puffy. Morning, she said. As if it were just another day. As if everything was still the same. Morning, I replied, my voice hollow. She sat across from me. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence was sharp. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know, I whispered. She looked at me. Eyes glassy but strong. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I know. I respect your marriage. I always have. I nodded. I believe you. But last night, I felt something real. I closed my eyes, trying to silence the ache inside me. So did I admitted. And that's what scares me. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. I didn't want to hurt anyone, especially her. You didn't force this, I said. I was there too. I let it happen. A tear rolled down her cheek. I think I should leave today. I looked up quickly. You don't have to. I do, she said softly. Before we crossed that line again, I didn't fight her, because I knew she was right. The longer she stayed, the weaker our resolve would become. I stood, walked over to the window. Outside, the woods looked peaceful, but inside, everything was broken. I never thought I'd be this man, I whispered. I thought I'd grow old with her. Quietly, honestly. Chloe stepped closer. She didn't touch me, just stood behind me, like a memory I hadn't asked for. You can still be that man, she said. I turned, eyes searching hers. Can I? After what I've done? She nodded. If you choose to be. She packed her bag in silence. I waited by the truck. When she came out, the sky was gray, clouds hanging low like sorrow. She opened the door, paused. I'll never forget this, she said. I know, I replied. Will you tell her? I shook my head. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I'll never let it happen again. She nodded once, got in, and drove away without looking back. I stood there long after she left, watching the road disappear into trees. My wife would be back tomorrow. I would hold her, kiss her, and pretend I was the same man she left behind. But something inside me had shifted. A fault line had cracked, and though no one else could see it, I would always feel it. That night, I sat by the fire again, but it didn't feel warm. I picked up my phone. Opened our wedding photo. She looked so happy, so sure of me. I touched her smile on the screen. Forgive me, I whispered. Not for what I did, but for what I allowed. For the silence, the loneliness, the empty spaces I never filled. That let another heart slip in. Tomorrow, she'd come home. And I would choose her again. Fully. Even if a part of me still ached for something else. Even if I carried a memory I could never share. Because that's what love sometimes becomes. Not just joy and warmth, but staying. Even when you're haunted.